Why have you done this? Because surely the A to G grades worked. We all know what A meant. We knew what B and C meant, and D and or E. We knew what they meant. It was part of our language. Why have we changed the language? I don't understand.
We've changed it because these new reformed GCSEs are significantly more demanding. We've had to change our education system to increase the academic rigour, to increase standards right across our education system, from primary schools, the way children are taught to read, the primary curriculum, mathematics in primary school, and now these new reformed GCSEs
right,
are on a par. But you have to distinguish.
I understand that you've changed the standards and you made them tougher, but why do you need to change the gradings? What's the connection?
To show it, because the change is so significant, we wanted there to be a distinction that employers could identify between the old GCSEs and the new GCSEs.
So it's PR.
So it has
no, it's about being able to distinguish new from old. And it's a very straightforward system. 9 is the top grade, 1 is the bottom grade, similar to G to A star, but it's just numbers instead of letters.
I know it's very difficult trying to make changes in education because people will bang on, parents will say, oh, they're too easy now. Some people will say, others will say the standards aren't high enough. And yet when changes are made, nobody likes the changes. However, in this instance, the teaching unions said this is going to cost money. We haven't been given time to get our heads around it, to do our best for the youngsters. It is, as Richard just said, simply changing numbers. It doesn't actually really help employers who will also be doing, like Richard and I, trying to work out what the heck the new numbers mean. And the money could have been spent on more teachers, on better equipment, on repairing those buildings that we know are leaking. Why make this the focus against all the pressure and advice from the teaching unions of people that are actually there and at the coalface?
Well, we have to increase standards, and that's been the objective from 2010.
The teachers aren't against better standards,
no,
are they? They're
Mrs.
just
Davis
against the way you decided to do it.
Well, the teachers have responded very well. These reforms have been a long time in coming into place. There have been long lead times for schools. We've given schools a long lead time to introduce these reforms, and they have responded well. And actually, in terms of the grading, 97% of secondary school head teachers understand the system, 80% of parents with secondary school children understand the system. But it is important to raise standards because we want to ensure that young people leaving our school system are able to compete with the highest performing education systems in the world. And these new GCSEs are on a par with those high performing countries around the world.
I'll make you a bet, though, just before we move away from the new grading system to numbers instead of letters. I'll make you a bet. I bet you 99% of employers, when they're interviewing a candidate for a job and they ask what grades they got at GCSE and they say, I got a 6, I guarantee that the employer will say, so what would that equate to? Would that be a C or a D or a B? What would that be?
Well,
they're going to ask.
No,
so what's the point?
Well, we have spent a lot of effort in communicating to business, to schools, to parents, these new grading systems.
They say you rushed it. I mean, the teachers say this
was announced.
They say, you know, various unions have said it could actually cause youngsters harm. So the idea that they're all on board, that you just said, is not entirely representative.
It will not cause them harm. The opposite is the case. They will be better educated as a consequence of taking these new GCSEs. 70% of small and medium-sized businesses understand the system from the surveys that we and the regulator has undertaken.
Okay. All right.
So we have had a very intensive communications plan with schools and with businesses and with parents.
Have you had good feedback? You certainly get it from me as a parent, about the fact that, as far as English is concerned, you are really majoring on proper spelling, on proper grammar, on proper punctuation, and you're introducing a lot more of the classics as opposed to a lot of modern literature, which is fine, but the classics matter, and Shakespeare is going to be a much bigger part of the curriculum.
Yes, and they're expected to read more widely. As well as part of the course. So at the end of this process, you know, there's been a 6-year reform process. We will have a group of young people leaving our school system who are significantly better educated than previous generations, and that will equip them extremely well as we are competing in a very competitive global jobs market.
Okay. It feels a bit experimental, though. There's going to be a period where you have to go through and learn lessons from this year and next year, and these are these children's lives, aren't they? Ofqual, the regulator, says, we have tried to ensure that the first cohort of students is not disadvantaged. How on earth do you do that when everyone's learning?
They will not be disadvantaged. There's a complicated system called comparative outcomes that ensures that the same proportions achieve the same proportions of grades as they would have done last year.
OK. I have to say, I asked a niece of mine the other year, she was talking about her A-levels. I said, she was doing English. I said, so which Shakespeare plays did you read? She said, none. Couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
You were furious, weren't you?
Yeah, I was really angry. I mean, you've got to be able to, you've got to understand Shakespeare to understand English literature. I mean, it's the fount and the font of so much of it.